Your Worship, members of City Council, my name is Alexa McDonough, leader of the Nova Scotia New Democratic Party, but since Jim Locke suggested that everyone coming to the microphone should establish their credentials for appearing here, and I know most people would consider those aren't suitable credentials, I want to say that I mainly appear as a former employee, if I dare to say that, of the City of Halifax in the Social Planning Department. And I guess the reason that it makes sense to me to start out with that point is that I actually came to work for the City of Halifax in that capacity as assistant to the social planner in 1968. And at that time was euphemistically considered, I think the title was coordinator of special projects. And special projects included a range of community-based initiatives, community development projects, concerned with childcare, concerned with family planning, concerned with a whole range of the very kinds of programs that we're here today talking about as being as urgent and relevant as they were then. I think I'd like to take just a moment to say that I actually left the City of Halifax in frustration because I felt that the City of Halifax was trying exceedingly hard then, as it is now, to try to make a dent in many of the problems associated with poverty, with the vicious cycle of welfare and underpaid, insecure work that has been described so ably in the task force report and by the many grassroots organizations that have addressed that report. I felt that perhaps what we needed was better conceived policies, and so I went into the world of policy thinkers and social work educators. I also thought maybe what could help solve the problem was to have better educated and more sensitive social workers. I think of all of those things are still important, but I left that world as well out of a sense of frustration that the real problems needed to be solved at the level of the allocation of resources and at the more senior levels of government where the real capacity to tackle these problems resided. I suppose I feel in a way as though I've come full circle, and it's a bit like coming back home. Exactly 20 years later, I attended the excellent conference on approaches to full employment, I think New Visions, sponsored by the City of Halifax in the fall of '88, exactly 20 years after I had come to work for the City of Halifax. And I must say I came away from that conference with mixed feelings of exhilaration and total depression. Exhilaration in the sense that there clearly remains in this city, in the city administration, as well as at the grassroots in a whole range of community organizations who are represented here today, a very firm resolve to tackle some of these problems, but depressing in the sense that I think we haven't made anything like the progress that we need to make. I'm not going to reiterate yet again the whole series of excellent recommendations in the task force report. I think many groups have spoken to them very well and very pertinent way this afternoon. But strangely, I really made the decision to appear here this afternoon. It may seem strange because most people associate me with being in a more oppositionist, negative kind of role, which seems to be my lot in life at the moment. But I do genuinely want to congratulate the members of City Council, the administration of the city, and the many, many people who have worked together to try to make some progress and advance further proposals and recommendations for what can be done to tackle, I think, the reality we have to face that those who are living on welfare in our community and those who are stuck in that cycle of the working poor are worse off today than they were 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And I think several people have identified the fact that our labor standards have not begun to keep pace and address the changes in the structure of work. The minimum wage has lost value. There has been an erosion of the purchasing power of the minimum wage, for example, over the last 10 years. There is not in our current labor standards code anything that really addresses the reality in the lives, especially of single parents, that on very short notice and very sporadically people get yanked into the workplace for short hours and then spit out. As already mentioned by several people, there is absolutely no provision, for example, when people are faced with sickness, when people are faced with children who are sick or need parental attention. There's absolutely no way in which there is any kind of adequate income replacement. Well, I could go on with that very bleak picture, but I quite simply want to say one thing to the City Council members and to those who have worked hard in this whole process of the task force report, and that is that you may not appreciate how much this is so, but it is exceedingly important for you to continue to try to be on the cutting edge of tackling these problems. There may be many in the group who question whether it is reasonable, given the limited jurisdictional powers and obviously the limited resources of the City of Halifax, for you to be trying to do significant things in terms of job generation, in terms of pioneering in many of these social programs. But I would have to say, as both a student of this whole field of social and economic policy and as a practicing politician for the last 10 years, that the City of Halifax has played an enormously important role in pressuring for improvements that only the senior levels of government can really bring in any kind of comprehensive way. And I realize that it is not always totally comfortable for the City of Halifax to be playing the role of advocate, playing the role of pressuring the senior levels of government to respond with the kind of resources and the kind of policy changes that are needed. But I think it is an occasion that it is appropriate for all of us to recognize that if it were not for the City of Halifax doing just that over the last couple of decades, that very little progress would have been made even here in the city, not to mention how often the benefits of that work here in Halifax have been extended to other parts of the province by serving as a pressure point to kind of raise standards elsewhere. So I really want to simply plead with the city to continue in this open process. I think you have heard it expressed by many community-based groups, grassroots organizations today, how much they appreciate the open consultative approach, but I think it has to be recognized that those groups need more resources with which to play a really meaningful and effective role. And I hope the city will continue to accept the challenge of trying to provide real leadership in that regard. I want to simply add one other point, and that is that I agree with several of the previous speakers who said that there is a desperate need for a challenge to go out to the business community, to the religious institutions, and I think to the academic community to play a more meaningful role in working together with the city administration, with the grassroots organizations, to really try to pioneer in some of these important areas. I think that it is very clear that, as stated very aptly by one person, that poverty is above all else the absence of sufficient resources. And it isn't so complex to find solutions to that if you're the ones that have the resources in hand. But I think it is going to take the concerted efforts of all of those different groups mentioned to really bring about the kind of shift in priorities needed to ensure that there is sufficient allocation of resources to make the improvements in the social assistance system that have been recommended here, and certainly by and large I think the recommendations are very sound, and also to be trying to generate more meaningful kinds of community-based economic development programs. They are going to take the investment of funds in order to do that, and I think we've got to appeal to all of those segments of the community to join with us in it. So again, I want to say simply congratulations. It's going to take courage and imagination and hard work, and above all, more resources to continue on this path, but I sincerely wish you well in it and hope that you will not back away from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you.